one of the things I wanted to start with is going back to the beginning. I think in order to truly understand justice, you have to understand that we are all created in the image of God. We like to very often make tribes, make segregated groupings, whether that be through a sports team or whether that be through religion, whether that be through where you were born, as we've seen lately, maybe even the color of your skin. And what we find so true in the scripture is that race is really kind of a faulty narrative. What we have is that all men have been created in the image of God. And we see in Genesis chapter 1, starting in verse 26, then God said, "Let us make man in our image, according to our likeness. Let them have dominion over the fish of the sea, over the birds of the air, over the cattle, all the earth, over every creeping thing that creeps on the earth." So God created man in his own image. In the image of God, he created him. Male and female, he created them. And the important part to know as we start in this process of justice is that if we don't break it down to the understanding that we are all created in the image of God, we get our little tribes, we separate, it is hard to look at another person's situation. It's hard to really get into the aspect of justice and saying, how can that person's life make sense to me? They're different. They're born different. They're a male, or they're a female, or they're from China, or they're from Africa, or they're from wherever. And this is a great illustration because I did this very, very easily when I played college soccer at the Masters University. And we all do this, if you would admit it to yourself, is we like our own groups. And if you're not a part of my group, it's easy for me to negate what you think, say, believe, who you're a part of, and believe in my group alone. And I played for the Masters University soccer, and our arch rival was Westmont College. And if you were to ask me during those days, I would tell you that no good thing could come out of Westmont. They were our nemesis, and it was just how we felt. And when you create rivalries, when you create hierarchies, when you create me's versus them's, that's where injustice can start playing its part. Because I would have said, oh, Masters has everything right, and we're all believers on this team, and how could there be anybody who's a believer on that team? And that just wasn't the case. There were believers on that team. One of my good friends' cousins played for Westmont, and I knew that he was a believer. But when we stop remembering that we've all been created in the image of God, that's where the first breaking point of justice begins. And that's really what's happened over centuries, right? Is one people group thinks that they're better than another people group because of, and you put whatever you want in there. And when we think about justice, we must go back to the very beginning to understand that every single person has been created in the image of God. We are so much more alike than we are apart. We are all Homo sapiens. We are all created in God's image. And so we must begin with that. I hope that's an encouraging starting point for you, that we are so much more similar than we are apart, and that as you remember that we are created in God's image, that will bring forth unity. The Trinity is this: unity in diversity, which makes up the Trinity. Being created in God's image, we need to be different. I hope that's a blessing for you this morning. God bless.